This is controversial probably for me. This is my personal opinion. I try to avoid using security champion, especially when I use it within the company, because I think that imposes a lot of overwhelms people with a lot of extra responsibilities, right? So we have that actually for several topics, champion A, champion B, testing, reliability, whatever.
Everyone has its own.
It became a little bit like, okay, another champion more. So, and introducing security champion, I would prefer to use something that actually feels natural from me, not to the rest of the community. In this case, we use ambassador. I prefer personally to use ambassador.
Welcome to Season 4 of The Elephant in AppSec, the podcast to explore, challenge, and boldly face the AppSec elephants in the room. I'm Alexandra, your host, AppSec enthusiast, and growth manager at Escape. Today, I'm joined by Enrique Larios Vargas, a security and learning specialist at Adyen. Enrique has over 8 years of experience designing impactful learning and enablement programs across fintech, engineering, and security. He's also been a university lecturer in software engineering in Peru, the Netherlands, and Canada. Bringing together technical expertise and behavioral science, Enrique is passionate about helping developers move beyond compliance and build a meaningful human-centered security culture. In this episode, we dive into his research paper, DASP, a framework for driving the adoption of software security practices, co-authored with 5 others, all listed in the description. The paper explores how behavioral models can drive secure development practices. We also get into the incentives and Enrique's controversial take on why we shouldn't call security champions anymore. He'll even be put to the test on this topic at the upcoming The Elephant in AppSec conference while he debated with other panelists. If you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to subscribe and follow it on your favorite podcasting app or YouTube. It's the best way to avoid missing future episodes. And with that, get ready for some strong opinions from Enrique. Dive right in! Hi, Enrique. I'm super excited to have you on the Elephant in AppSec podcast. It's good timing, as you mentioned. I just released the podcast with someone from Peru, and you're from Peru as well, but of course now for a really long time, living in the Netherlands and working and I think researching on a lot of different, especially around security culture topics and how it influences development and how to drive secure software practices, which is a very interesting topic so far. And I think you've developed, a framework with a dedicated paper. And I think, LinkedIn is a great source for actually discovering all of this material as well. Indeed, like we've discovered through LinkedIn, someone we know you in common. So that was great to also discover your paper, on this topic, like developing that framework to drive secure software, like a drive adoption of secure software practices. And I think it was more kind of a unique approach, to integrate kind of behavioral science into security, right? And focusing more on motivating developers to actually build these habits of secure coding. And secure coding is a super important topic in AppSec, and I think it was 33 different drivers that you grouped in 7 categories. Yeah. How did you actually came up with the idea of that study at the first place?
Yeah. Well, the pleasure is mine, Alexandra. Thank you for inviting me. Indeed. So this study, I think, if I try to recall the origins when we started in this project, is actually first I moved to Canada in 2021 for working at the University of Victoria in British Columbia. And there, so it was my first time, let's say, going deeper in the universe of behavioral science. My background is in computer science, so for me it was a little bit stepping outside my comfort zone, trying to understand human behavior, not thinking in terms of algorithms or code, but in terms of mindsets, right? So, and that's where I started exploring and understanding why we need actually a good understanding of human behavior to better approach with better strategies, problems that actually we are dealing in the technical environment, like in this case, software security challenges or introducing security coding best practices. And indeed, so this study combines, I think, as main contribution, the inclusion of behavioral science methodologies to understand what are the problems. In particular, I am using 3 models. One is the Combi model, and that helps explaining a little bit, let's say, understanding human behavior from the perspective of capabilities, opportunities, motivations. And then the other is more about the self-efficacy. So to what extent people feel confident about or capable to do some specific task. And the other is more like aligned with response efficacy, if people feel like their contributions are worthwhile, basically. When all these drivers happen in an environment, let's say in any type of environment, not necessarily technical, like security, so that definitely helps to understand what are the blockers or what are the challenges or what are the problems that we need to tackle properly in this case, and how to better adjust or tailor strategies towards tackling these problems, right? So yeah, so this is how it took some time. This project it was in the middle of the pandemic. Yeah. So it has a personal, actually, it took something personal from me in terms of trying to, I still remember those times that by Zoom contacting all the
people online.
all the people online, trying to collect data for my study, and it was a crazy time. People were dealing with a lot of burdens, right, about most of office obviously working remotely. And of course, I'm very grateful that 28 participants, 28 either developers or security professionals helped me to actually get that information to get this outcome of the study.
And do you think like that the fact that it was all remote and the fact is now how actually COVID impacted that we went from, everything in person, all interactions, not all, but a lot of interactions in person, then going remote. And then now it's kind of hybrid environment. Have you seen also impact on behaviors and the way people approach also for you like behavioral science and how you had to adapt maybe your mindset in a way?
Yeah, because as I said, so one of the variables that to understand human behavior is opportunities, right? And the opportunities comes from actually our environment. And definitely in this case, given that situation, the pandemic forced us to change our regular environment and habits for conducting some tasks. So definitely it influenced our way or the value we give to more how we do some tasks, right? And that's also part of the understandings or learnings that we got from the study, right? So what are exactly the social factors, the environmental factors that the context that affects also the human decisions, or in this particular study as well.
And what was the most, surprising learning that you had from like the social context, the analysis of, let's say, different opportunities that might have or that you might have? Like, what was the something maybe that you didn't expect to learn, but kind of it came up from asking those 28 people?
Actually, one of them was the contextual part. I noticed that depending on in what context this case, the developer software engineer works, in what type of industry or what type of organization they belong to. So the way they make decisions differs, right? So, and the tendency to actually introduce security as part of the daily workflow, it's also differs per industry. We noticed that in our data set, we had people coming from different industries. So it was easier to see how people coming from a financial services organization or a healthcare, so they actually, by culture, by the context in the environment or the pressure they had, regulators or any other external factor affecting their decisions, so they were more like reinforcing security internally. But other engineers, for instance, in other industries like gaming, for instance, they had the belief that in this case, security was relying more in the infrastructural level than in the application level. So the focus was less on investing in security practices while they were coding, because they were relying in a third party, in this case, security teams or security infrastructure, who were taking care of the other or the bigger part of the security aspects of the service, right? So that's basically, that perception differs.
And do you think it's possible to change that perception without recreating? Because without recreating some external pressure?
It's possible to change, but for that we need to inject actually what is the main, let's say, events or main consequence that could trigger that behavioral change. So a mindset is basically, and that's something that I've been understanding better from the study and my interactions with actually face-to-face with developers nowadays. So is that you really need to care about exactly what are the, let's say, attitudes behind those understandings or perceptions of security. A developer, if, for instance, or I think this is not only applicable to any engineer, it's in general to any person. Right? For instance, if we associate a negative emotion or attitude to a specific task, so that it doesn't matter how much we train people, how much information we give them, or how much policies we have. So they will just do it because they have to do it, but they won't do it because they care. So this is different. And of course, when we do something that we care, we pay more attention to actually understanding any risk, any potential problem that could happen. If we just do it because we need to do it, it's just a checkbox, right? So and we don't evaluate, for instance, in too much detail risks like in the other case. So that's something that actually we need to pay attention to as well. And that's something that I observe very, very commonly nowadays, right? After the study, 2 years after the study. So there are a lot of programs in between, right? So a lot of programs strategies that we have developed in the industry to tackle challenges, especially in terms of culture, awareness, right? That actually try to motivate more to highlight the need for caring about security in our daily practices. But yeah, so if in the end the developer or the target, my target audience, they are attaching, in this case, negative attitudes or emotions to those concepts, so the strategy needs to go in a different way. So this is something that we really need to pay attention to.
And I think it's maybe also hard to measure the start, like whether it's negative or not caring at all, or like neutral and not caring. Because sometimes, at least what I see, I think I already talked about it on the podcast. As I had, I've literally seen, developers like with Vanta training, for example, you have like a video to watch, and if you already know some things like don't click, on a phishing email, that's kind of boring for a developer to watch. So it was more exciting for them, to literally build a script that bypasses like kind of fakes watching the video, to not just watch it, but actually build something on the top of that, because they building something they cared about more. So, and I think the same kind of goes with on more like global level as well. But how, I think the question is, how do you change, that perception of negative emotions and make someone care? Because a lot of training materials are actually like not sometimes not tailored enough or not detailed enough, or do not kind of resonate. Especially, I mean, some organizations, of course, put a lot of focus on security culture and actually developing this part, but a lot of organizations, as you mentioned, also might not or don't hire, specifically for that. Why don't? How would you actually change that?
Actually, you already shared part of the potential solutions for that. So one thing is that cultures is probably something that not all organizations have like a very well structured, or developed within them. So having a specific team who cares about people culture is focused on security, for instance, right? To try to understand the behaviors, the behavioral part. So this is sometimes security is just addressed from the point of view of a compliance. So we need to actually follow these security guidelines because it's imposed by regulators, or because we as an entity, we are heavily regulated. So if those are main, let's say, drivers, so it's field mandated, right? So and that's why we have internally people who are just overlooking practices, or just creating scripts to avoid trainings, kind of, right? So, and so when we start caring about, let's say, what it actually makes our people internally in our organizations to care more about security is who's is just about this, right? So caring about the behaviors, paying attention to what actually are the drivers who motivates them, who enables them, so that affects the capabilities, bring new opportunities. So, and that's behavioral science. So behavioral science is if you don't pay attention to the capabilities, opportunities, you don't bring the opportunities or the motive. So you cannot introduce any strategy that targets a specific behavior change, right? And that's the first step. So one of the strategies is tailoring content, right? So you mentioned as well that people are not going to follow any guideline or training or resource that they don't feel related to or is not part of actually what they need. But if we don't ask, what are your main challenges? What are your perceptions of what are the blockers that you feel security impose in your daily work? So if we don't understand that, negative attitudes that they have, we cannot target any strategy properly. So it's maybe that not necessarily in terms of training, but it's something sometimes in terms of the way we security teams, in this case, or security professionals, address their work. So maybe they feel like the police, right? So not people or teams who are just there when notify there is an issue happening, right? So, and that, of course, when you see like the same perception that we have when we see police around, immediately we associate it. We associate it with something wrong is happening, right? So the same perception for developers or engineers. If we see security people around, okay, there is something wrong. What did I did wrong, right? So this is something like also we need to tackle as part of the mindset. It's what I perceive in the study as well. So it is the part of the outcome of the study, and is what I also see in nowadays in the industry.
And when you ask developers what is the blocker for you, what is the answer that you maybe the most commonly get, or maybe sometimes even the answer that was very uncommon but made you think, oh yeah, that's actually maybe something that most people think, but they don't voice it.
Yeah. So first, I will say the communication aspect. And that's also highlighted in the study a lot. We try to, or at least our first immediate perception is that security is a technical aspect. It's just a technical topic, right? But in the study also we found that there is a heavy important driver towards communication, effective communication, and at different layers. So there are a lot of misunderstandings between engineers and security because the expectations are different, because they think in different mindset. While security professionals are a little towards more pessimistic mindset, thinking in terms of risks, right?
All can go wrong.
Exactly. Yeah. And developers thinking in terms of how do I ship this feature the fastest possible.
Yeah.
They need to get a consensus, right? So they need to agree in the trade-offs, in this case, that actually makes both actually a robust and secure product not be delivered. Yeah. So that's communication layer. So that's expectations from each side. So, and sometimes, of course, other technical roles involve product management and also compliance, tech regs. There are more stakeholders involved in these type of decisions, right? But yeah, so this is a very heavy communication problem. I see a little bit more like more than the technical one, I will say.
Yeah, I think especially probably when you have to communicate across different cultures and across different departments and time zones sometimes as well, which can be tough. You coming from Peru and Max and hundreds of very warm people, very open, talking about everything. I think, for example, Netherlands, very different from that perspective, also very direct. So you kind of have to, at Canada, also very different, very lived before. So you have to also try to understand how you first, I guess, need to communicate across departments and then sometimes across cultures too, which can be very, very hard, especially for someone not being used to that. But do you think, for example, I think one thing that you mentioned at the beginning as well, and in your study, it's the social opportunities. So kind of that socially, we're also more inclined if the whole company is kind of geared towards security. for example, and people around us are actually adopting security practices, we're also more inclined to do that as well. So do you think, is it something we should pay attention when hiring into the development teams? Because sometimes you care about how is, let's say, efficient someone is building GraphQL API or building a heavy JavaScript application, but I don't think we always ask security questions for people at that point of view. And, so many people are also involved in the hiring process, sometimes without actual manager being in the process at the start. So should we either involve a security person hiring developers, or at least have some kind of checklist given by security to make sure someone they're hiring is also helps us to amplify that social aspect of security culture in the future?
Very nice question. Hiring process is always like challenging, was trying to find the right candidate, right, for a position, in this case, engineering, for instance. And addressing questions definitely helps if you include questions focused on security. I know that, for instance, where I work, they have security questions in the hiring process that basically is more about what is the rationale behind their decisions. So what are the risks that they think ahead when they address a solution? That's definitely helps to have these kind of filters, questions at the beginning to understand the mindset of the candidate. However, I think that's only, let's say, one step towards finding the right people to have these security mindset people in the organization. Because even if we hire someone who has a really good mindset, security mindset, if they end up in a team where they don't have this social opportunity to deploy their abilities, right? Where all the effort that regarding security, addressing security concerns, or all the efforts that this person put trying to improve practices within the team or the rest of the company. So they don't see that valued by the rest of the team or the organization. So that is going to be a big blocker, right? So detriment in this case, the motivation that they have actually to conduct this or to be kind of a champion or ambassador of security practices for the rest of that organization. So it's something that it's a good practices to, of course, hire people who have a security mindset, I would say. I'm not saying that all the hiring processes for engineers should have security questions, because of course it's going to depend on the criticality of the services or work that the developer and engineer is going to do in their daily work. For financial services, probably it is.
It's kind of important.
It's a must, yeah. but I will say that yes, asking questions regarding is how do they introduce risks as part of the rationale when they address a problem is actually something nice as a way to think, oh, this person really evaluates and considers security aspects when propose a solution or designs a solution. So that's actually kind of important in general, I will say. Even if security is not a corner attribute, quality attribute that you are looking for. But yeah, so that approach needs to be complemented by actually having a proper security culture that actually values your efforts, right? And then, of course, that promotes these people spread around the organization, because this is a snowball effect, I will say. It's kind of, right, approach. But, of course, that's when we hire. I will say that, and I think probably something that is very commonly now as a strategy mentioned, is the security champions as well. And security champions is something that is a good strategy, but also if we don't have a security culture like properly, let's say, or at least with a foundation solid in terms of how to make initiatives from security champions actually be sustainable in the future, right? If champions are not going to feel rewarding their work in the mid or long term, because there are always blockers coming from the different layers of the organization. So it's also something a strategy that is not going to work in the end.
Yeah, you mentioned valuing the efforts, actually. Well, now with security champions, one of the guests on show that I actually also talked quite often. He built a security champion program, and I talked to him about, like, in terms of value, it can be something that's very different. In his case, like, he built a program that's basically based on a different belt system. So the more different efforts you do, the more scoring you get assigned, and then you can earn, let's say, black in the future, and then each year it kind of gets restarted to motivate people to progress towards that more. So that's an interesting approach. I don't know if you know him, Dustin Lear. So he designed the whole concept around it. What do you, because you mentioned that you don't believe in a security champion program on its own without security culture place. So how, for example, what do you think about actually, like, the approach? Is it complementary, but how would you actually find ways to value the efforts of security champions?
That's a good
Friday
question as
pizza,
well.
you know?
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know.
Well, and that's something, that's actually something where the behavioral science also can help, right? So in the part of the combi model, so there is an aspect of motivations. So there is say two types of motivations that the framework or the model proposes. So one is that, let's say, automatic motivations driven by emotions, let's say, and other is the more the reflective motivation. So it's more like the rational motivations. It's it's important to start understanding what actually motivates, in this case, a security champion is kind of a role, yes, within a team that is like advocating for security practices. Of course, there are several levels as the belt system, but I think it's a complementary, I would say, with the security culture program as well. Why I believe that is about sustainability. So I have seen, for instance, we have as well, where I work, an ambassadors program. So we have a lot of volunteers. They don't have a specific role, no, like assigned to them like an ambassador properly. So they are volunteers, so ambassadors. So who is an ambassador is like a champion. It's someone who is the point of reference for addressing a specific topic. Could be security, could be reliability, could be other specific topic, right? And in terms of sustainability, if we want them to actually contribute as ambassador within their teams, we actually need to provide them with motivations, right? And also the environment around to actually do their work, do their volunteer work. And that's only possible if we give them the resources, the time, right, as well, is part of their career, frame, is their part of their expected role. So because in an organization, of course, you have specific goals to achieve within 3 months, 6 months per year. If, of course, you are going to be measured by what you have achieved during these time frames. So if your contributions is aligned as well with one of these items in the career framework, so of course that's something that you feel like yes, I'm doing something that is going to be valued by the organization. That's one indicator, right? Another thing is that you see the effect of your work. If ambassadors see actually the value, what I was mentioning about that, if they feel like they are making a contribution to the organization, so that's a very rewarding experience for them. So that contributes to their motivations to actually continue delivering it. And that's an important factor as well. And how we can promote that is that we prepare them in the skills. So that's the capability part of the model that I was explaining at the beginning. So what are the skills that will help you to actually enjoy being an ambassador or a champion? So sometimes it's not just the technical part. Maybe they want to excel, they want to become an expert in some specific part of the topic. Security could be any branch of security, but besides that, so if you want to excel as ambassador, and that's again one of the drivers that we identify a lot is the communication part. So how you actually influence other people, how you effectively communicate, how you effectively engage others with your initiatives. So that aspect of the soft skills, right, is something that we identify that is very important as well as together in your role of ambassador champion. It's not just contributing with guidelines or rules or things that people need to follow and then check KPIs and then indicators and see. No, it's not only that. I would say that because everything is about interactions within the organization. anything is about, I would say, especially when you want to nudge secure behaviors. So you really need to,
very hard.
yes, so you really need to start understanding how you influence others, how you actually communicate effectively, how you deliver, or what strategies will help you to convey the message that you want to actually people to follow afterwards. And that's why we pay a lot of attention in prepare them for the setup for success. We call it as a train the trainer, right? It's one initiative. So identifying all these non-technical skills that requires an ambassador to actually excel in their role as ambassador. And many of them are soft skills, I would say.
And once you've identified, so you mentioned KPIs, how do you monitor the impact? Because, for example, do you monitor per organization? How do you actually connect it to the specific metric for them? That, let's say, within their department, there is less incidents that happen. What are the actual specific metric that once, let's say, someone is actually exerting their influence, that you measure, okay, that our training, our coaching session one-on-one actually had an impact with them and within what they want to promote to others?
It's challenging, I would say. So it's very difficult. It's very difficult to have just one gold indicator that can tells you like, okay, this is we are doing well, or to what extent we are doing well. So the only way, by the moment, that we try to use as let's say indicator in this case is after a participant, engineer, or any participants who are under any program that we have, security program or learning program, is basically how this was used. So from knowledge acquired to actionably, how to what extent it was actionable, to how they are actually using it, the knowledge specifically. And one side effect is the decreasing the number of incidents or the number of requests, issues identified, or bugs identified in a specific topic, right? Especially it was covered in a training. But yeah, it's very challenging. So my role, for instance, now is more in the mixture of security culture with learning. So, for instance, I am more involved in all learning programs within tech now. So, and that's why also I highlighted very heavily in the last questions, let's say the soft skills part, right? So, because that's something that we see any security champion or ambassador or for any specific topic that they demand for this, right? So it's beyond the technical parts. And those indicators comes from the learning parts, right? So once we train them, so then how they know that their contributions are effective is because people change the behavior, and as a side effect, there was a decrement in the number of issues or topics in the QA addressed as well about the topic, or tickets addressing any bug or security related concern.
And regarding learning materials, let's say someone wants to improve their security culture, posture, or statement. Where would you recommend them to go, or how would you recommend them to build those learning materials?
I'm going to be very honest with you. Learning materials, there are a lot of books, a lot of online resources, and that's something that could be also overwhelming, I would say. You don't know how to choose or where to go. There are so many online resources. And nowadays what I'm doing is just going for specific topics. So in regarding security culture, for instance, there is a lot of resources about security culture. I think I have one specific material that I use as a reference, but I just read more papers than books, right? So, or white papers focus on that. So for instance, there is a security culture survey that comes from KnowV4, right? So all resources or materials that they publish is usually something that I really like a lot, because it's based on benchmarks as well, no? So that's very insightful. And regarding learning, I will say that I always, from time to time, especially as a reminder, I try to read again, make it stick. I'm not sure if you have read that book, but
I haven't read
The
this
Science
book.
of Successful Learning is a beautiful book.
Okay, I'll look it up.
Yeah. especially because they give you strategies, right? So that's probably the most insightful part of the.
Mm.
And then let's say, especially because as part of my role, I need to. I'm just not. I mean, of course, I need to say as part of my trainings, people, you should do A, B, and C, right? These are the examples, but how the strategies, how addressing to the context of each scenario is different, right? So, and I think this book gives you a lot of strategies.
Okay.
How to learn properly.
And it's probably
Lasting.
the hardest thing to make also actually something stick within the long term, because sometimes people just do it because okay, someone told me to do it, so they're gonna do it, and but then it doesn't. Or someone, like a New Year resolutions, everyone is starting at the beginning of the year, they have this motivation, and first month you see like a lot of people actually trying to do something, and then it kind of goes away. So that's also quite hard to do. In this season, I also want to ask always like one question: what is most overrated security buzzword according to you, and why?
Okay, this is okay. This is controversial probably for me because it's something that well, this is my personal opinion.
Hmm.
Probably one is security champion. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Security. Yeah, I try to being honest, I try to avoid using security champion. Yeah, especially when I use it within the company, because I think that imposes a lot of overwhelms people with a lot of extra responsibilities, right?
Hmm.
So we have that actually word for several topics: champion A, champion B, testing,
Okay,
reliability,
yeah,
whatever.
everyone has its own.
Yeah, so it became a little bit like, okay, another champion more. So, and then introducing security champion, I would prefer to use different, something that actually more like feels like it's no growing or no feels natural from me, not to the rest of the community. In this case, we use ambassador. I prefer personally to use ambassador.
Okay.
But I think probably champion is one of the buzzwords that
I can really feel that this is the word you don't like.
I try to avoid
Yeah,
use.
that. I mean, it's very interesting because it's especially there is a whole culture. I think especially in less in Europe. I think especially in the US, there is a whole culture regarding that.
I joined, I think was 2 weeks ago, this security awareness workshop for SANS Institute, provided by SANS Institute. Yes, so there were a lot of talks targeting security champions. I would say, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm learning a
You
lot,
did not
yes, but
enjoy
I
it.
won't use that term. I won't use that
Okay.
term here. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I'm sure that provokes some debates for sure. I would actually like to have you on the Elephant and AppSec conference. I think that organized in January, because I'll probably do a panel around security champions. So that's gonna be interesting conversation for
Yeah,
sure.
my pleasure.
Well, thank you so much, Enrique, for coming on the show. It was a pleasure chatting with you. I'll definitely put all the links of what you mentioned. And excited to see when the episode airs.
The pleasure is mine. I'm grateful for the opportunity that you gave me to share my experience and also the paper that we published.